Hey there, history enthusiasts. Welcome to A Quick Note, the channel where we dive into fascinating stories from the past. Today, we're exploring the incredible evolution of human civilization through the lens of our very first cities. So, grab a seat and let's embark on this historical journey together. But before we jump in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more quick notes on intriguing topics. For ages and ages, people like us have been making towns and cities to call home. Let's take a peek at some of the very first cities we put together. Not too long ago, experts in digging up old stuff, archaeologists, had a pretty solid idea about why and when we began building towns and cities. The common belief was that folks ditched their wandering ways and decided to stay put, farming the land or looking after animals in pens. Guess what? A game changer came along when Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was found. It shook things up and made people think maybe we settled down near fancy religious places. Whether that's the real deal or not, something big happened during the Neolithic Revolution. People said goodbye to roaming around for food and hello to staying put. They started building villages and towns that later became the big cities we know today. That's where human civilization's first cities came into the picture. Cool, right? 1. Çatalhöyük. Imagine this, on the Konya Plain in southern Anatolia, Turkey, there's this ancient city that's been around for more than 9,000 years. It's called Çatalhöyük, and it might just be the very first city ever. Now, here's the interesting part. It didn't have any proper streets or public buildings that we can recognize. But get this, at one point, around 10,000 people lived there. City like a bunch of mud brick houses huddled up real close, almost like they were best buddies. What's even cooler is that the rooftops were like the main roads, and there were ladders everywhere leading up to them. The holes in the roofs weren't just for peeking at the stars. They helped with the breeze, like built-in air conditioning. Now, here's the twist. Instead of having separate places to say goodbye to the ones who passed on, people were laid to rest right beneath their own homes. Can you believe it? And sometimes, they did this thing where they took the skull, covered it in clay and ochre, kind of like making a face mask. Creepy, right? They probably used these face masks for some special rituals. And guess what? These eerie heads were passed down in families for generations. It's like a real-life ancient mystery. Check this out. In the ancient city of Çatalhöyük, they didn't just build houses, they turned them into canvases with murals all over. And you wouldn't believe it, little figurines that looked like the Venus of Willendorf were scattered everywhere. Back in 1958, a cool archaeologist named James Mellart thought these figurines were the heart and soul of Çatalhöyük's religion. But hold on, another detective of the past, Ian Hodder, came in and said, not so fast. He figured these figurines weren't just religious symbols. They had something to say about life and death. Imagine this, from the front, they showed a full-bodied woman, but flipped them around, and it's all bony. Spooky, right? Now, Hodder thought the folks in this city were all about equality. No fancy houses for important people, and no sign of who's in charge. Men and women were on the same level. Some even say Çatalhöyük might have been like an early version of anarcho-communism, where everyone shared and lived as equals. Fancy that. The city hung on until around 5700 BCE, but then things took a turn. People started leaving faster than new folks showed up, and Çatalhöyük started going downhill. Eventually, it was abandoned, left to crumble away. But in its heyday, this place was all about farming. They grew barley, peas, almonds, and pistachios. There were sheep and goats wandering around, and the folks were experts at making pottery and obsidian tools. Talk about a blast from the past. 2, 3, and 4. Eridu, Uruk, and Ur. Let's dive into the ancient tale of the Sumerians, pioneers in the city-building game and often hailed as the first civilization on Earth, though some folks argue Egypt had the title first. Now, among the Sumerian city crew, Eridu takes the crown for being the oldest. Back in 5400 BCE, Eridu stood proud near the Persian Gulf, close to where the Euphrates River meets the sea. This city had a crazy long run, about 4,800 years. Imagine all the ages it saw, with layers upon layers of cities forming as they built and rebuilt. In the beginning, canals were the stars of the show, helping with irrigation, and the city had humble homes made of reeds and mud bricks. But over time, the shifting sands and rising salty water levels pushed people to ditch Eridu for good. Fast forward to around 3800 BCE, and you've got Ur entering the scene. This urban hub sat smack in the middle of the Mesopotamian plain, but here's the plot twist. Evidence suggests people might have been living their way back in 6500 BCE. By 2500 BCE, Ur was like the jackpot of wealth, something the world had never seen before. Sumerian cities were famous for their grand temples called ziggurats, and Ur had one of the most famous ones, the ziggurat of Ur. Now that's a piece of history. Let's rewind the clock to the 4th millennium BCE, and we'll find ourselves in Uruk, one of the earliest cities in the world and a big-shot city-state. By around 3100 BCE, Uruk was at its peak, home to a whopping 40,000 folks, and its influence stretched to about 90,000 people around. That made it the happening place of its time, the most populated city on the block. Legend has it that around 2800 BCE, a fellow named Gilgamesh ruled the roost in Uruk. Now, this city wasn't just a bunch of regular houses, it was a maze of adobe brick buildings. What made Uruk even more special were the canals weaving through it like a watery highway system. These canals weren't just for show, they linked up the farmlands around Uruk with the big maritime trade network along the Euphrates River. Talk about making waves in the ancient city scene. 5. An-Ghazal traveled back in time to An-Ghazal, an ancient spot just east of Jericho. The story begins around 10,300 BCE, hitting its peak by 7,000 BCE. Despite having only 3,000 folks, An-Ghazal was 4 times bigger than its neighbor Jericho. Nestled by the Walker River in what we now call Jordan, An-Ghazal sat on terraced land, starting as a pre-ceramic settlement with mud brick houses, each having 2 rooms. The land around An-Ghazal was a jackpot for farming and hunting, giving the locals a diverse menu. But what's really cool about An-Ghazal is the 195 statues discovered so far. These statues show not only humans but also animals, and they likely played a role in rituals and religion. The human statues, about half-size, had painted on hair, clothes, and even ornamental tattoos or body paint. For eyes, they used cowrie shells. And get this, 3 of the statues had 2 heads, adding a touch of mystery. Just like in Catalhoyuk, when someone passed away in An-Ghazal, they often ended up beneath the floor of their home. After the flesh said its goodbyes, the skull got a makeover. But not everyone got a fancy send-off. Most folks were buried in garbage pits along with waste. A bit unusual, but that's An-Ghazal for you, a unique slice of ancient life. 6. Mehrgar. Take a journey back to around 7000 BCE, and you'll stumble upon one of the earliest cities in human history. Mehrgar, located on the Kachi Plain in Balochistan, Pakistan. Now, what makes Mehrgar stand out is that it's one of the first places in South Asia to show signs of farming. The big debate is whether Mehrgar's ways were influenced by Neolithic cultures in the Near East or if they went their own way. Some folks even suggest that the people of Mehrgar are the Og ancestors of the Indus Valley civilizations. Ancient city with its mud brick houses and fields growing barley, wheat, dates, and jujubes. As Mehrgar expanded, its residents got busy with crafts, making beads, tanning leather, shaping flints, and working with metals. Here's a cool nugget of history. Mehrgar holds the title for the oldest known example of casting through the lost wax technique in southern Asia, and it's a copper amulet that holds the honor. But what really catches the eye are the ceramic figurines they made. Until about 4000 BCE, they were all about crafting female figurines, hinting at some religious significance, perhaps a mother goddess belief. The early figures were a bit plain, but later ones showed off details like hairstyles, shaped breasts, and women holding babies. It seems like Mehrgar had a thing for expressing reverence toward the feminine side of things. What a fascinating peek into the past. 7. Knossos. Step into the fascinating world of Knossos, the palace known for the legendary King Minos and the iconic tale of Theseus and the Minotaur. Today, it's a popular tourist spot on the Greek island of Crete, near the present-day capital of Heraklion. The ruins we explore today are the leftovers of a palace built after 2000 BCE, but the story of Knossos goes way back into prehistory. Around 7000 BCE, the first folks settled in Knossos. At that time, it was like a small town, with probably fewer than 50 people calling it home. But, oh boy, did that change over the centuries. In the beginning, they had simple houses made of wattle and daub, similar to their neighbors in the Levant. Like others in the area, the Cretans in Knossos were busy with animals and crops. Crafting stone tools was also their forte, using different materials with skill. Now, here's a bit of a surprise from the past. Archaeologists found the remains of children buried under the floors of these early houses. Weird as it might sound, back in the Neolithic era, it wasn't uncommon for societies to lay their loved ones to rest right under the home floor. Knossos, with its rich history, certainly has more tales to tell than just the one about the Minotaur. Starting around 6000 BCE, things kicked up a notch in Knossos. The settlement grew, now hosting hundreds of people. Most houses got an upgrade with stone foundations, though they were still quite cozy, usually having just 1 or 2 rooms. There was this unique building with 8 rooms, believed to be more of a storage space than a fancy house for someone important. Fast forward to 4000 BCE, and individuality became all the rage in house design. Decorative pillars sprouted up, and they even started constructing the first public buildings. But here's where the real drama unfolds. As the Bronze Age made its entrance, Knossos transformed big time. Wealth and prosperity painted the town, and palaces started popping up all over Crete. The Minoan civilization, with its unique cultural flair, began to shine. Now, the first palace in Knossos had a bit of a rocky start. An earthquake wrecked it. But fear not, it got a makeover around 1650 BCE, coming back even grander. The next couple of centuries marked the height of the Minoan civilization, until an invasion, likely by the Mycenaeans, around 1400 BCE brought it down. Come classical Greece, the Minoans were already ancient history, leaving behind a ruined palace and a city that became the stuff of Greek legends. Knossos was a puzzle to the classical Greeks, much like it continues to intrigue us today. The mysteries of Knossos live on in the tales that echo through Greek literature. Bonus: the first city, maybe mythical, Atlantis. Dive into the realm of speculative theories, and you might stumble upon a controversial idea claiming that the legendary city of Atlantis could be hiding in a place now known as the Eye of the Sahara, or the Rishat structure, in western Mauritania. While many archaeologists and historians brush this off as mere fantasy, the theory suggests that this site aligns with Plato's detailed descriptions of Atlantis. According to Plato, Atlantis had mountains to the north, forming the source of flowing water around a colossal geological structure with concentric rings. To the south, there was a vast plain, and to the southwest, a channel leading to the sea. It's like the geological features of the Rishat structure decided to play matchmaker with Plato's Atlantis. Adding an extra layer to the mystery, there's evidence pointing to possible catastrophic events that sent waves of water and mud westward through the Sahara towards the Atlantic Ocean. If true, this could have wiped away any signs of a once thriving civilization, aligning with the supposed destruction of Atlantis. Now, you can bet this suggestion is causing quite a stir in the world of debate. Other locations are tossed into the ring as possible Atlantis candidates, and, of course, some folks argue that Atlantis was nothing more than a captivating myth. So far, no solid evidence has emerged to confirm the existence of this ancient civilization, if it ever existed at all. The mystery of Atlantis continues to elude us, keeping its secrets tucked away in the folds of time. Human civilization's first cities. Conclusion. The urge to live together in cities signaled our ambition and the longing to be near the necessities of life. Back in the day, the first cities, though smaller than what we call cities today, were colossal marvels, unseen and groundbreaking. They weren't just homes. They stood as magnificent symbols of human achievement and reverence for the divine. These city monuments sparked fresh ideas, birthed new cultures, and became catalysts for human evolution. They pushed minds to explore, observe, and understand the world, ushering in practices that shaped the course of our species. And that's a wrap on our quick exploration of the birth of human cities. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, give us a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to A Quick Note for more bite-sized dives into the wonders of history. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stories that shape our world. See you in the next Quick Note.